What's up guys? Welcome to AnimeKouhai. If you'd like to help me out, please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel.
Now, the evil dragon, having leapt across time and space, Veldora, whom Ruminus both detested and secretly counted on, had stopped the seemingly invincible de Gruwel's attack. The time of despair had finally come to an end.
Volume 20, Chapter 4, Battle of the Sacred Tree.
Rewinding to the events just before Veldora's departure. To halt Milim's rampage, I utilized spatial transportation and made my way to the old Eurazania region. The icy landscape Velzard had left behind made it almost impossible to travel directly due to the poor visibility. Anticipating this challenge, we arrived at a spot slightly removed from the main area. From there, we advanced in a straight line, scanning for any traces. Since Milim and Velzard were supposedly engaged in a confrontation, I approached cautiously. But my assumptions were completely off, and in the worst possible way.
You are here sooner than I thought, but it doesn't matter now. Milim, unleash your power and destroy the sacred tree.
It wasn't just Milim and Velzard present, Feldway was there too. Or rather, it was as if he had become someone entirely different, exuding an overwhelming presence. His aura was so dominant that I doubted I could win even if I gave it my all. To make matters worse, he was arrogantly commanding Milim. But Milim was in a horrifying state. While the footage had been unclear and distorted, seeing her up close revealed her menacing transformation. A pair of jet black wings spread from her back. A single crimson horn jutted out from her forehead, shimmering with a prismatic glow. Her exposed skin was armored with tough, glossy dragon scales that shifted in muted tones, adorned with strange, floating patterns. Was this Milim's true, stampede, form? The sheer power radiating from her sent chills down my spine. This was Demon Lord Milim in her purest form, a walking catastrophe, fully embodying the title of Destroyer. But why was such a terrifying Milim obeying someone else? What in the world was happening here?
The Regalia Dominion ability of the ultimate skill Justice King Michael has been used. It appears that Feldway has managed to control Milim.
Wait, what? Seriously? As if Milim rampaging isn't terrifying enough, now Feldway's using her like a pawn? This is beyond a nightmare scenario.
Fortunately, it seems he hasn't achieved full control. Although Feldway has allocated the entire computational domain for Milim's domination, he appears only capable of issuing basic commands.
That's bad enough. The only saving grace is that he didn't tell her to attack me. Feldway, clearly displeased by our arrival, showed no intention of engaging us. Instead, he ignored us entirely, issued his order to Milim, and departed.
His control over Milim is unstable, which might make him cautious. Alternatively, he could be prioritizing the destruction of the sacred tree.
Does this mean Feldway's control is limited to giving orders without the ability to retract them? That seemed likely. The mere thought of facing Milim at full strength, with the intent to kill, sent a shiver through me. I should have been relieved that it hadn't come to that, but this entire situation was beyond anything I had anticipated.
This is completely unforeseen. For her to lose control implies she was unable to resist.
I knew Feldway had a domination ability, but I never imagined Milim could be subjected to it. Seal-san wasn't at fault for this oversight either. Milim had always claimed she was immune to such powers. It was only in her berserk state that this domination had succeeded. In hindsight, this must have been Feldway's plan all along.
Allowing Milim to run amok could spell disaster for the entire world. But to counteract that with Regalia Dominion, it's an incredibly risky gamble.
For Seal-san to describe it as such, it must have been a strategy with slim odds of success. Honestly, it was pure madness. Worrying over it now seemed pointless. What mattered more was the significance of this sacred tree Feldway had ordered Milim to destroy.
The sacred tree is a divine entity that safeguards the capital of the sorcerer's dynasty of Sarion. It's massive enough to support an entire city and serves a crucial role in stabilizing the magicules of this world, preventing natural disasters.
Seal-san responded to my question with the usual smoothness. Always dependable and full of insight, but the gravity of what was said couldn't be ignored. I had never been to Sarion, but the thought of its capital being situated in a tree, it was hard to grasp fully. Yet, if the entire city relied on this tree for stability, its destruction would be nothing short of catastrophic. We had to prevent that outcome at all costs. If stopping them wasn't possible, then, at the very least, we needed to buy enough time for the residents to evacuate.
Well, that sounds like quite the mess.
Failing that, disaster was inevitable. Guy's remark carried an air of detachment, as though the issue didn't concern him. This wasn't the time for idle commentary.
No, not at all. My apologies.
Do you have a complaint to make?
I wanted to grumble about his overly perceptive nature, but there was no point. Sometimes, his blunt observations distracted me from the bigger picture. I dropped it, opting instead to focus on the task at hand.
That Feldway. Always the cunning one.
Guy, however, muttered in an exasperated tone.
I was just thinking, bringing me along might not have been the worst decision after all.
Guy added, and I couldn't help but agree. Convincing Guy to join us hadn't been easy, but if he hadn't come along due to concerns about Iverage's attack, things might have ended badly. With Guy handling Velzard and me dealing with Milim, we had a chance. If it had just been me. No time to dwell on hypotheticals. Milim was already on the move. Without hesitation, Guy stepped forward to confront Velzard. I quickly turned my attention to Milim, trying to inform El-Tan of the unfolding situation. But no matter how much I tried, I couldn't get through to her. It felt like she was unavailable, and a sense of unease crept over me. Left with no other choice, I followed Milim while reaching out to Benimaru. Using telepathy net, I managed to connect with Benimaru while struggling to keep up with Milim. I launched attacks to divert her focus, but she completely ignored them. Even though the attacks weren't at full power, they were still formidable. Milim, however, let out an earth-shaking roar, releasing a strange force. It seemed the sound waves from her voice disrupted and shattered molecular bonds. I barely managed to escape unscathed, but the destruction left in her wake was overwhelming. A river dried up entirely. Confronting her recklessly wasn't an option. Still, if we didn't act, Sarion's downfall was inevitable. While racing to think of a solution, I finally connected with Benimaru through telepathy.
I've devised a plan, though the odds of success aren't great.
There was no time left to second guess. Traveling at astonishing speeds, dozens of times faster than sound, we were nearing Sarion. Despite the slim chances of success, all my hope rested on Seal-san's strategy. Resolving to act, I informed Benimaru of the situation and instructed him to execute the plan, doubts and all. The Sorcerer's dynasty of Sarion faced a crisis unlike any in its history. Amid the chaos, Emperor Elmesia, as calm as ever, turned to her mother, Sylvia, and asked in her usual easygoing tone.
So, do you think Rimuki will show up?
No, I doubt it. It seems Demon Lord Milim has gone berserk, and is on his way to stop her.
You've got to be kidding.
Elmesia couldn't hide her shock. Things had escalated far beyond what she had expected.
Apparently, the Frost Dragon Velzard caused all this trouble, and Demon Lord Rimuru even brought Demon Lord Guy along to help.
Bringing Guy along was no small feat, only Rimuru could manage something like that. Acknowledging this, Elmesia decided to let the matter slide, though it was clear this development posed a serious problem. At present, the capital of Sarion, nestled within the embrace of the sacred tree, had turned into a chaotic inferno under Jahil's relentless assault. To make matters worse, a man who introduced himself as the 3-star commander Zalario had joined the fray, throwing the entire region into turmoil.
The sacred tree's defensive systems have been pushed to their limits, but even that isn't enough at this point.
Elmesia couldn't help but feel anxious as the situation deteriorated. The Magus forces were throwing everything they had at the enemy, yet they were being dismantled one by one. Still, Elmesia took some solace in the fact that they hadn't been completely obliterated yet. Sarion took pride in its elite Magus Corps, a distinguished group of military officers revered as pure blood knights. These knights served as the emperor's trusted emissaries, their ranks filled with those descended from an ancient lineage. They were regarded as the ultimate warriors of the Sorcerer's dynasty of Sarion. In reality, though, their strength stemmed from their compatibility with highly advanced, magic cavalry, weaponry. These cutting-edge weapons, known as Magitech Knights, or simply Magus, were one of the nation's deepest secrets. To maintain their secrecy, they shared the same name as their riders. These constructs stood about 5 meters tall, encased in a magisteel exterior, and powered by dragon muscle fibers. Possessing their own intelligence, they could independently seek and target enemies, though their full capabilities were unlocked only when piloted. Much like spirit users assimilating with their spirits, these Magitech Knights achieved peak performance when operated by their designated riders. Typically, Magus units were stored in magically enhanced gemstones, often worn as necklaces or bracelets. Interestingly, Kabul and Guido were also equipped with these devices. When they first encountered Rimuru and his companions, they had been ready to deploy the Magus to handle the rampaging Ifrit. However, deploying Magus outside Sarion was considered a grave security breach and would have put Duke Elalud in a precarious position. Moreover, even if they had used the Magus, it wasn't guaranteed they could defeat Ifrit. Instead, they opted to fight directly, reasoning that it was sufficient to protect Ellen and secure her escape. Kabul and Guido's natural abilities were on par with A-rank fighters, and their combat prowess didn't drastically improve even when using the Magus. This was one of the reasons Duke Elalude had chosen them to safeguard Ellen. The combat effectiveness of each Magus unit varied widely. Some riders were individually weak but became nearly invincible when piloting a Magus. These units typically operated at a minimum of special A-rank power. Currently, a squadron of about 300 Magus units was engaged in the battle.
I didn't realize we had so many Magus units.
I have been quietly building up our forces.
The 13 royal families of Sarion were notorious for their internal disputes, yet they had come together in this crisis, contributing their resources without hesitation. If they had opposed the plan, Elmesia might have been forced to abandon it entirely. Fortunately, that wasn't the case, and their cooperation was a small silver lining. Meanwhile, Elmesia and Sylvia continued their conversation.
With the development of elemental colossi underway at Rimukis, our advantage might not last much longer.
If that happens, they'll probably push for joint development, don't you think?
Most likely. Rimuki is practical, and we all agree that we don't want these dangerous technologies leaking out. They'll likely implement restrictions on how many are distributed.
Despite her usual discretion, Elmesia's openness about the situation was surprising. Even the high-ranking officials present were caught off guard, though their astonishment stemmed more from avoiding the grim reality of the battle.
A big thanks to the AnimeKouhai patrons who made this video possible. Jared Bressler, Havox, Speed Saber, Curtis Loban, Judah Herrera, Just a Guy, Miss L.W. Hernandez, Jason Martin, Zach Rosen, Jerry Sladek, Ray Perez, Jay, Donald Williams, Day of Light, John M, Godman Gaming, Markithian Tidwell, Adrian, Kumo, T. Bush, JV, Thomas, Christ, Joshua Cousins, Jose Hernandez, Khalid, Christian Deshazer, Divine C. Harris, Montyboy98, Ruben, Yuki Iki, Gray, Isaac, Koala King 93, Quilly Buckner, Alver, Darius King, Normal Defate, Vicente Baharias, Joshua Andrade, L, Gary Miles, Dragon Spawn 666, J. Rule, Nate, Leiron Sangkap, Lucas Guet, Jason Martin, Christopher Mash, Charles Bailey, Sky T, Diego Ginoza, Andre Hamilton, Martin Ramos, Guy Ensley, Simon Rode, Emperor WSA, Miko Espinosa, Gobi Lin, Pratik Bandari, Faiz Mansour, Jackson Early, Smexy, Carl Stephen Bernadal, Gareth Hashimoto, Steven Madison, Vasto Lord, Marl Barsha, Ralph Ignacio, Efrain Hernandez, William Locke, Kamal Luke, Jahid Hassan Lipu, Spencer Candila, Ian Sikibiol, Thanacorn Lee Sawat, KACP9R, The Harv, Drayden Yamauchi, Alex Buthanu, Michael Brinkley, Nathan Alexander, Mario Kanoy, Karam Faraj. Thank you so much for helping out. I'll see you guys in the next video.